morning and welcome to Rising. We've got a great show for you today. Thanks for joining us on a Monday morning. Today I am doing the show with Jessica Burbank. Great to see you, Jessica.
It's always good to be on with you, Robby.
And we appreciate you getting up very early because you're on West Coast time right now, so that was very kind of you.
Yes, San Francisco today, but I'll be in D.C. this week, so that's exciting.
We're looking forward to seeing you. All right, let's talk about what we're getting into here as we inch closer and closer to the presidential election. President Joe Biden still trailing former President Donald Trump in the polls. A new ABC News Ipsos poll found that Trump is at 46% support, Biden 44%. That's without the percentage of the electorate who say they will not vote. A five-way matchup on a poll through Langer Research Associates finds 42% of support for Trump, 40% for Biden, and then 12% for Robert F. Kennedy Jr., 2% for Cornel West, and 1% for Jill Stein.
Democratic groups are coming for RFK Jr. as he continues to pose a challenge to President Biden. Biden's allies are considering running a negative ad campaign against Kennedy that would likely be led by Future Forward, a pro-Biden super PAC. So far, Democratic super PAC Clear Choice has spent $30,000 on digital ads attacking Kennedy. Trump also took digs at RFK Jr. When asked last week if he would debate Kennedy, Trump said, quote, "I don't know anything about him. He is not a serious candidate." Robby, what do you make of all this dismissiveness? I think running attack ads might make him more popular. I think we're in a political landscape where Joe Biden not liking someone makes him more popular. I could see that happening, but I don't think he's someone to dismiss, seeing how this polling looks.
Not at all. And of course, Trump says, who is he? Who even is this guy? I don't know who he is. But there have been rumors, and RFK Jr.'s campaign has said that Trump, through intermediaries, actually offered him the vice presidential slot. So either that now that's just a rumor. That might be not true. Obviously, if it is true, then Donald Trump's line here that he doesn't even really know who RFK Jr. is was a little bit of a rhetorical flourish at best. But I think it goes to show the threat that both major candidates feel from RFK Jr. I think Trump world has caught on to the fact that a lot of their voters actually like RFK Jr. as well, or perhaps even better, given that the one thing Trump is vulnerable on from the right is actually his handling of COVID from very conservative people. They remember him as the guy who took directions from Anthony Fauci, who locked down the country and all the rest. So obviously RFK Jr.'s criticisms of those things does make him popular with some aspects of Trump's base. And then on the other side, how many parties is Joe Biden going to throw at the White House where he brings the rest of the Kennedy family to the premises, puts them in front of a camera, and tries to remind voters that not all Kennedys, right? All the Kennedys are behind Biden except the one, which is, I think, I don't quite understand the point of that tactic, but it seems to be something Biden is doing frequently.
I think the one thing RFK Jr. really has right now is an issue that I didn't realize was on the forefront of a lot of Americans' minds until recently, but the corruption we're seeing in the food industry, in the agricultural industry, and in the pharmaceutical industry. And these have been focuses of RFK Jr.'s campaign speeches, interviews, and it really seems that they land with people. On TikTok, like even among the youths, we're seeing this focus on, I have friends who have gone to Europe, or I've gone to Europe, and I'm eating the same exact food, dairy, bread, what have you, and I lose weight. And it's not usually because they're walking more. A lot of these people are now saying, I don't have a stomachache afterwards. I don't feel gross afterwards. I think it's the additives and preservatives in the food that we're getting in the U.S. that you don't have in Europe. And to focus your campaign on the kind of corruption that impacts people directly every single day has been, I think, a really smart move for RFK. We're not seeing him have the labor focus that Biden has had. And I really think that's where he falls short of capturing more of the left vote. But in this poll, I mean, we're seeing, 42 Trump, 40 Biden, and RFK Jr. is pulling votes from both of them at about 12. And so you begin to wonder, is he making an impact there, pulling votes away from Biden, speaking about this anti-corruption? Is he pulling votes from Trump as well? And what would his campaign look like if, instead of bundling with very wealthy donors, which the voters are sick of seeing. Everyday people are sick of seeing the elites running the political process in the United States. And I think if he wasn't in that scene, he may have not had the money to get where he is today, but I think he would have captured more votes if he had a bit more of a labor focus from the Democrats.
Yeah, it's a bit tricky. He's obviously, he's not a political outsider. You know, I mean, he's part of one of the most famous political families in all of American history. His father ran for office, was in government. His uncle was the president, and so on. That said, he's never held higher office himself, and he is outside the major party system at this point, clearly drawing some level of support from both Republicans and from Democrats and from disaffected people who I think who might not be voting at all, who wouldn't, you know, this presumption that, well, if he would get out of the race, then Trump could have all those votes or Biden could have all those votes. Well, there are people who would just not vote, who are drawn to a candidacy for the reasons you're mentioning, for someone who has a critique of the system and has had for a long time. And I don't agree with all of his policy solutions on those fronts, but he is someone who has been raising these issues forever, and that used to allow him to be in good standing with at least the Democratic Party, with at least Democrats, and no more. And I think that's very telling. But in other news, New York Times executive editor Joe Kahn says that his paper is, quote, not a safe space. In an interview with Semaphore, Kahn expressed frustration with the White House's criticism of the New York Times, implying that Team Biden seems to think it's the Times' job to help Biden get re-elected. Kahn rejected that notion, said rejected the notion that the Times should be an instrument of the Biden campaign. His comments enraged some liberals on X. I don't know if you've seen any of this, Jessica, just like people have been sharing this over and over again, saying, well, he's asleep at the wheel to the threat of democracy stuff. How could you not want to just cover that constantly? Because in the interview, Kahn is saying, well, like, if you poll people on the issues they care most about, they care about the economy, they care about immigration, they care about some of these, they clearly care about democracy in these, very abstract terms we're discussing them. But if that's not, we can't only talk about that when people do care about other things. It's not my job to convince our readers that you have to support Biden in order to save democracy. And I was actually surprised by the number of prominent people saying, no, that's exactly what the New York Times should be doing. It's crazy.
Yeah, it wouldn't be accurate reporting if that's what they were doing, if they were saying the Biden administration is saving democracy. This idea that we have to pick a candidate from the two-party system is exactly, I think, what RFK Jr. and Trump refer to when they say they're outsiders. It's like, yes, you're not embraced as a darling of the Republican establishment or Democrat establishment, but that doesn't make you an outsider to the ruling class of the United States, especially someone with the last name of Kennedy, especially someone with a real estate dynasty like Donald Trump. And I think it's almost like people are realizing that the New York Times has been a stenographer for the establishment, for the Uniparty for so long. And that doesn't mean that there's not going to be opinion pieces and even pieces that make the front page of the New York Times that are critical of what the Biden administration is doing. Their loyalty is not to the Uniparty. It's not to the darling of the Democratic Party, the president now, who seems to embrace the same neoliberal agenda as the New York Times. But the New York Times has persisted beyond both administrations, whether Republican or Democratic. And they have a very clear agenda of protecting American capital. That's their readers. Their readers want to see that the stock market remains steady. We see steady growth in the economy. They want to make sure that the United States prioritizes U.S. hegemony and the United States position. And that means sometimes criticizing Biden, even if only to make their viewers believe on the conservative side that they're pretty even-keeled. The New York Times has its own political agenda independent of Biden, and it's one that embraces the neoliberal agenda. And some people have confused that for meaning making sure Biden stays in office, when that's not really what that means. And that's a hard thing for a lot of people to stomach.
Indeed. Well, we'll continue to follow that, and we'll be back with more Rising in just a minute.